Hi, this is Julie Wong from Many Hands. I'm so excited that you're joining us today to make this cute peekaboo card. This card design features a modern Here For You die cut on the outside, and the inside reveals a really cute scene with two little bunnies. In this step-by-step tutorial, I'm going to cover how to make a card base, ink blending, die cutting, stamping and masking, and coloring. Today we're going to be using our Here For You die. It's a standalone die with a frame, and it cuts out the outline as well as the words. And we'll also be using our Here For You stamp set. In the Old Testament, in Deuteronomy 31:6, God tells the children of Israel that He will never leave them nor forsake them. And this is a promise He makes throughout the Bible in the Old Testament and the New Testament that you and I can believe and trust in today. And this stamp set has lots of cute little animals from all different continents, just to encourage and remind people that no matter what happens, God will be there for them and you will be there for them. We also use the My Refuge stamp set, which is a fabulous stamp set. I just really love this set. It has such wonderful words of blessings to us, and it's something that we so need in these times. We're going to start by making a nice sturdy card base. It's really important to get a good paper trimmer because it's something you're going to use every time you make a card or make anything. So I have a Fiskars paper trimmer here. It has a replaceable blade and an extendable arm. I use it to measure everything out. I don't use a ruler, and it's just very convenient to have this tool. For cardstock, I'm using A3 size Acker paper. It's 300 GSM smooth card from Overjoyed. You can use any cardstock that you like, but I would suggest that it be smooth and at least 270 GSM, and that's a heavyweight cardstock because you want your card to be nice and sturdy, and it really makes a difference when you make a card that is made out of a sturdy cardstock. I'm trimming down my A3 sheet to make the card base. After cutting down my paper, I use a bone folder. Mine is a Teflon bone folder, but you can use any type of bone folder, or you could even use an old ballpoint pen that has run out of ink. And I use the depression that's in my trimmer here to create the crease. So now I fold the paper downwards to get a good crease. And I use my bone folder to reinforce the crease again. Let's move on to the next step, which is to ink blend the background. I'm just using a sample card that I made earlier to check the approximate area that I want to ink blend. I'm going for a softer look on the outside, and then it's going to be a little bit more intense towards the center of the sentiment. I'm using Distress inks and a makeup brush to do my ink blending. And the ink color is Salty Ocean. So before I ink blend, I tap off the ink at the side, and then I go onto my paper lightly in swirling motions. So just repeat this until you're happy with how dark it is. So you can do ink blending with many different types of brushes. There are sponge applicators, foam applicators, and other types of makeup brushes such as this one. The type of tool you use depends on how much ink you're trying to put down, the kind of blending effect that you're trying to achieve, and how you hold the brush and apply the ink using the particular tool. I like to use this brush because I'm able to apply the ink with a light hand onto most kinds of paper and still achieve a pretty nice blended effect, and I like this kind of light look. The other thing I like about this brush is that it's really easy to wash out the ink colors, but it does take a long time to dry, just like all of the makeup brushes, around 24 hours. And of course you can just skip the washing altogether if you buy several brushes, one brush for each color family. Distress inks and water-based dye inks are water reactive, so just to get a little bit more interest into this background, I'm going to spray it with a bottle of water, and then I take my paper towel and dab it onto the water, and it will pick up those little droplets and create a textured effect on the background. Time to ink blend the cardstock that I'm going to cut out the Here For You sentiment from. I'm going to use the same brush that I used earlier with the blue ink. All I have to do is swirl off the excess ink onto the paper there on the side, and then I can go into my abandoned coral, and it's not going to contaminate this color at all. I'm going for an ombre effect, which is darker at the top and it fades out at the bottom. So now we're die cutting here from you for the cardstock. This is my Sizzix Big Shot. This is one of the most popular die cutting machines in the market, and the reason why you would want a die cutting machine that's this size, because there are actually many different types of die cutting tools and there are lots of different sizes, but this size is good because it will be able to die cut most of the larger dies as well as the small dies. And by the way, it can also do embossing. So I place the cardstock and the die with the cutting surface downwards in between two plastic cutting plates, and I run it through my die cutting machine. I crank it through by hand and it makes a loud cracking noise, which is completely normal. I use a pokey tool. You could use a penknife to take out all the little bits from your die cut. I want to get more dimension on my sentiment since it's a pretty simple card front. So what I do is I die cut the Here For You sentiment 3 more times and then I glue them together so that it's a bit thicker. I'm using my Lawn Fawn tube glue to glue these layers together because it has a narrow tip, the glue dries matte and clear, and it's a very strong glue. You can use any type of glue that you like, but I definitely suggest to get a glue that has similar features to this one. I've also popped out the O from the Here For You so that we have a place for the peekaboo. So now we need to cut out the peekaboo hole. I'm marking it with a pencil using the sentiment. So this is a very useful die set from Hero Arts. It's a circle die set called the Infinity Dies, and it has circles in many different sizes. I've got one that fits the O in the Here For You perfectly. Since this is a very small die, it's a good idea to tape it down with washi tape, or in my case, Thermoweb purple tape, to make sure that the die doesn't move when it goes to the die cutting machine. I run the die through the die cutting machine and then I've got a hole for the peekaboo. So now we need to know where to stamp our cute little scene on the inside. So I'm using the circle from the front to mark the area on the inside. So I used 2 stamp sets to stamp the cute scene with the 2 bunnies sitting on the tree stump. The tree stump is from My Refuge and the 2 cute bunnies are from Here For You. To make it look like the 2 bunnies are sitting on top of the tree stump, I'm going to do a masking technique. Of course, you could also just stamp one on top of the other like this. I start by stamping the scene of the bunnies inside the card, and I make sure that one of the bunnies' faces lands right where that circle is so that it'll peek out of the peekaboo hole. I'm using Tsukineko Classique Archival Pigment ink in Cocoa Brown. I like to use brown ink when I want something to look a little bit more soft and storybook-like, which is what I'm going for in this card. The next step is to make a mask for these 2 bunnies, so I'm going to stamp the same stamp onto a post-it note type tape. This is roll sticky note tape from Daiso. It's 5 cm wide. I'm just cutting out the mask. I only need to cut out the bottom part because that's the only part that overlaps with the tree stump. Placing the mask on top of the stamped image and pressing it down firmly. I'm stamping the stump, which is in the background, right on top of the mask. And when you remove the mask, you'll see that the bunnies look like they're sitting right on top of the tree stump, and it looks like it's underneath them. So I'm cleaning my stamps using an old rag and water. Just rub them to get the ink off, and then let them air dry and store them back on the acetate sheet they came on. So now it's time to get to coloring. I'm using watercolor pencils today. I'm using my Staedtler Noris watercolor pencils and my Pentel Aquash brush in size small. Watercolor pencils are great when you want to get a soft blended look, and in this case I want this to look sort of like a storybook type style illustration, so that's why I'm using my watercolor pencils. So I'm coloring in the darker areas of the stamp first, the places where there would be indentations or creases or shadows, say underneath the feet of the rabbit or in the main vein of the leaf. And then after that, I'm going to come in with my lighter colors. And when I'm done with coloring, I'll go over everything with the water brush using water, and it will dissolve all the pigment and we'll be able to blend everything out nicely. I'll repeat this process until I'm happy with all my coloring. Now I'm just going to speed up the coloring process so that you can watch me as I color and hopefully pick up some tips. Now that I'm done coloring, I'm going over everything with my water brush. There's only water in the barrel. If you don't have one of these brush pens, just use a paintbrush with water. I've got a paper towel handy to dab my water brush onto, and I use that a lot because every time I go between a dark color and a light color, I will make sure to clean off my brush so that I don't contaminate the colors. So here we're just speeding up the coloring again, so just sit back and enjoy. And now I'm just going over areas that I want to be darker because it's always nice when there's more contrast in your coloring. I have a couple tips for using watercolor pencils. First of all, if you want to remove pigment, if it's wet, you can just dab it off with your paper towel. If it's dry, you can try erasing it with an eraser. When putting down color, don't press too hard and try to color in a circular motion. This prevents any harsh marks from going down on the paper, and it'll make it easier to dissolve the pigment later on. Start light and then go dark. You can always go back and make something darker later, but it's going to be harder to remove too much pigment. And don't forget that your watercolor pencils can be used just like normal colored pencils. So if you like an area to be extra dark, just use it as a colored pencil. You don't have to add water. And we're almost done, so the last step would be to glue your sentiment onto the front of the card. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, learned something new, and want to try this out. You can find our products at mightymightyhands.com, and all the supplies are listed in the description box below. If you enjoyed this tutorial, please hit like and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more fun, faith-filled, crafty tutorials. We'd also love to see you over on Instagram and Facebook, and definitely make sure to tag us on all your awesome makes. God bless the work of your hands.